So here's the go. I've found this shop in a tier 3 city in China, which I'm going to convert into a bar office. I mean, it's actually going to be my office where I do my day job, you know, do my computer work and have the QID, which is the logistic companies drop stuff off, which I QC and ship around the world. But it's also going to be sort of a bar. I'm actually going to run it as a bar, and to be safe, I've decided to do it in stages, sort of like a safety net. This is the 2 stages I've decided to go through. Stage 1 is just setting it up with no transfer money, no goodwill money, no standard 2-month deposit, and just simply pay the rent until the paperwork comes through, which is the licenses, so that I can actually run the bar legally and keep it really cheap and just simply make it operational. And then after 6 months or so, if no snakes have come out of the woodwork, no little tricky things pop up that I didn't realize, and I feel comfortable, then I might jump to stage 2, which is where I actually drop some coin onto it and do it up, like fit it properly so it actually looks like a decent bar. It needs to be looking like a viable business before I put more money into it. Also, very importantly, I actually have to feel comfortable with it and want to continue doing it, because at that point I wasn't even sure. I mean, after 6 months I might have had a guts full of it and may just want to pull the plug. If you watched the first video, you may have remembered me mentioning about getting the red Chinese characters off the front glass doors. Well, yeah, that was me, scraping the bloody things off. It took me almost a week just to clean the shop, and at the same time I was sourcing materials, not just for the shop, the equipment, but the cheapest paint I could find, stopping compound, you name it. I just basically had to find anything I could as cheaply as possible to have the shop looking just tidy and usable. Luckily, just around the corner there's just basically several roads that are full of shops that have all your handyman gears, tools, everything. So if it wasn't cheaper to get it online, because there's several good websites in China that you can use to buy stuff direct from factories even, which is actually what I do for a job, factory sourcing. If I couldn't find it really cheap online, then in the shops they're sure to have it. It basically took me anyway like a week just to sort of clean it up and source most of the materials. I was very lucky because one of the shops down the road, they sold me the tables and chairs. They're not great ones, but they sold them to me really cheap. I got a counter from Anhui for like 700 RMB for that. Definitely something to sing and dance about. I mean, that's like $100 brand new pure wood. Pests were actually quite an issue because there were cockroaches the size of rats and rats the size of cats. I mean, the rats were just walking in and out of the place. The exhaust fan, the wiring hole where the wires just went in and out of the building, drains, they were just coming in and out. So I got some stainless steel wire netting and closed up those holes. Little Tats comes over when I'm putting the wire mesh on, and he's like, "What are you doing? The rats won't hurt you. Don't worry about them. You'll be fine." And then roughly 10 days after paying the first rent, I was over in Vietnam, over in Cambodia, Vietnam border area there in a national park looking for a medicinal plant. The timing wasn't really great, but it was kind of good to step back, get out of the environment and just reflect on things a little bit, because a few things popped up that I hadn't expected. Well, I kind of suspected, but until you're actually doing it you don't know. Like, for example, quite a few people in the neighbourhood wanted to pop over and check out this foreigner doing shop fitting, like cleaning and sanding and painting. They'd just come up to me and say, "What are you doing, boss? Why don't you get someone else to do that? That looks a bit tough. I mean, what are you doing?" Sort of thing. Just really quite interested, I guess, curious, maybe a little bit nosy, asked a lot of questions, you know, the usual, what's the rent? I mean, there's a flip side to everything, right? So I couldn't really sneak under the radar there, and that brought the good and the bad. I mean, sure, good people arrived who wanted to practice English, wanted to see a foreigner, whatever. But also, there was the odd snake in the grass. There were just a couple of little red flags, just little things that need keeping an eye on. I'm going to go into more details on that in the final video. Might be a good idea to subscribe if you want to catch that. Plus running the bar and the final outcome. So basically, while I was wandering around the jungle in Vietnam, I was pretty fixed and firm on sticking with stage 1, not jumping to stage 2, so I hadn't dropped too much point on it, and if anything came up I could just jump out the window and run away. At that point I was going to keep it very simple, risk-free, and not get caught in any traps. But once I got back to civilization, got into town, visited a few bars, had 1 or 3 drinks, then the old mind started going a bit funny, started playing up on me. I was thinking like, wow, these bars in Vietnam are pretty cool. Actually, there's some really interesting wee bars, a little bit different flavour to the ones in China. What if I just set up a really cool bar, just take a gamble, put some money into it and set something up really nice? That might be the way to do it. What the hell, just go for it. It's only money. So by the end of my last night, it was probably more like early in the morning in Saigon, I had this really good plan in my head of this amazing bar, and I was going to go back, probably drop 15 or 20k renminbi into it, get this thing going. She was all go. But then the next morning, in fact later that same morning, I'm on a plane and back to China, and while I was sitting on the Gautier, the high-speed train, looking out the window, just kind of probably with a bit of a headache, you know, just kind of looking out over Guangdong, gave myself a hard slap in the face, said, nah, slow down, stick to the plan, stage 1 first, see what happens. Get the shop tidied up, looking good, operational, as cheaply as possible, and see what happens from there. Another important point that I needed to keep telling myself and reminding myself is that it's actually my office, not a bar. If you spend a wee bit of time in China, you'll actually notice there's a lot of little shops where they don't seem to have any customers at all. There's just someone sitting there working on a computer, often with the whole family with them. There could be the wife, 2 kids, and the grandparents all there sitting around eating lunch. And say they're selling curtains, for example. You walk in off the street, say, do you have any purple curtains with green glitter? And they're like, no. Like, they don't even look up. They don't even seem to care or want to make a sale. But the fact is that they're doing a lot of stuff online. So online sales, not just brick and mortar shop. My general plan was to have a brick and mortar office, which also just happens to be a bar, and maybe sell a few coffees and that during the day, just for extra income, something to do, make it more interesting, as I've already explained. One thing you might be wondering about is staff. I mean, if you got a pub, you need staff, right? Well, in my situation it's a little bit different because it's actually my office. It's not, strictly speaking, a bar. I kind of fly my own plane anyway, and I don't need any passengers. Good employees in China can be quite hard to find anyway, and if the right person pops up, boom, offer them a job. And if I need help, then I'll look for somebody. My visa situation, if I tell you, I'll have to shoot you. Now, I'm actually a Hong Kong PR and I have a business type visa. I would suggest not doing this kind of operation on a tourist visa. The business license is extremely fast, straightforward, and basically costs the paper that it's printed on. But the health food safety certificate side of things is a little bit more complex and time consuming, bit of a pain in the ass. I mean, firstly, you've got to have the shop sitting there ready to operate so that they can come and inspect the shop. At least one of the employees, preferably the person who got the business license, has to go and get a health check themselves to make sure they don't have TB or something. As I mentioned in the first video, I actually got an agent to help organize these things and got everything done under a friendly local's name. Also add to that things are not done exactly the same way all over China. It could be completely or slightly different in another city or wherever you are. My advice is, in China, if one person says no, it can't be done, go and ask somebody else. You'll be surprised, because if you keep asking enough people, you'll find a solution and you'll get things done. PRC is definitely not as corrupt as when I first went there years ago. It still definitely helps though to have the right contacts for getting things done. That hasn't changed really. But generally speaking, if you don't drop your bottom lip and you stay positive, you be friendly to people, if you don't have really high expectations, don't take any really big risks. So hopefully if you do come off your bike, the damage isn't too serious and we don't have to get the violins out. But in saying that, no matter how many safety nets you put up, things can still end up getting a bit messy. And in the final video I actually go over some of those safety nets I put up and how they actually saved my bacon a wee bit. So back to the shop and back into it. Basically I had a few weeks to try and get it all done before Chinese New Year arrived. See, Chinese New Year is an interesting time in China because people go back to their hometowns for up to 3 weeks or so. So the factories close, all the little shops where I buy my stuff close, the logistics companies go on holiday. Basically, you struggle to buy materials and get things done in Chinese New Year. I was also doing my full-time day job as well and trying to get things tidied up for Chinese New Year. Most of the time I was actually over there at night time working away for 3, 4, 5 hours, and I didn't actually take a lot of videos. I mean, mainly because I wasn't sure if I'd ever actually use the videos, but I just had too much to do, and I found out through a mate of mine. Actually, he's a rugby contact, a distant cousin as well, who is also based in Guangdong, that the best foreign beer is actually Fijian beer, the best money for value, and it's actually not a bad drop. So I ordered some cases of that. I brought in most of the wine and liquor myself across the border from Hong Kong. The cheese and butter I also got from Hong Kong. Most of the other food I just got local. I mean, Walmart, Eon, you can get just about anything in China these days. I brought over a Nespresso coffee machine that I already had in Hong Kong. I found a decent sized fridge freezer, like 1500 RMB on JD.com. The shop menus, business cards, flyers, I just designed, made, printed out myself, laminated, whatever. I had the shop sign made. A little shop around the corner did it. It cost about 100 RMB, which is about $15 US. It wasn't really amazing, but the thing is, I was sticking to that plan of getting everything done as cheaply as possible, the shop up and running, and seeing if the shop passed the Health Food Safety Certificate before going to stage 2 and dropping some serious loot into it. Whether it was night or day, people from around the neighborhood would quite often come around just for a bit of a look and ask me a few questions, which was all cool. I mean, I got to know some of the locals and built sort of a little bit of a relationship with some of them. Some of them weren't so friendly, and quite a few of them actually gave me some advice on how to do it. And one time I was stopping around the edge of the door, and this group of guys come up from the car groomers next door. And one of the guys, he's like, "That's not how you stop. I used to do stopping in a construction site for years," and he took the trowel out of my hand, and it's not a problem. I just stood back and smiled and thought, oh great, he can carry on and do it for me. But the problem is he messed it up and he couldn't really fix it. So in the end, I mean, I had no choice. I had to sort of, it's all right, no problem, I'll do it. So I fixed it up myself, and he just lost face, and he would never look at me after that. And you know, I didn't mean to, but it's so easy to accidentally get offside with somebody. You know, I realise this, and I don't purposely do it, but these situations arise, and later on they can become a problem. So I might talk a wee bit more about that later on, maybe in the next video. That fake wood stick-on paneling that I stuck around the bottom of the walls is actually only like 250 RMB, which is about, well, it's under $40 US. Some things are just ridiculously cheap in China, but often the quality's not quite there, so that's sort of the trade-off. Sometimes it's really good to have the option available to buy something that's really cheap and nasty and doesn't last very long as well. You may be looking at that paint and thinking, is that pink? Well, it just so happens that my favourite colour's pink. Well, not really. Actually, the exterior paint I ordered online, the paint colour I chose definitely was not that colour. It turned up, I looked at it and thought, oh geez, it's pink. But anyway, I just painted the shop in it, and the repaint can wait for stage 2. I already had the LED from an assembly plant I used to run in Shenzhen before, and pretty much had the place ready. Not quite, wasn't quite ready, but the first customers came in. Like, I wasn't prepared at all, but they were the first customers. So it's like, okay, so gave them the menu, and they wanted a coffee and a bit of food. They seemed to like it, and they came back in a few days.
Yeah, I can't see.